Hello, Pueblo, Colorado. Let's go down memory lane, okay? So the Aztecs, they actually never reached us. They never got to Pueblo. They never reached the Arkansas River. And then we got the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. Never forget about the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. That changed everything. So there's a lot of hatred right now for 1954 because that's when the city charter was written in 1954. I don't know why these damned elites are so pissed off at us, you know, at the progressives. In 1954, there was a city charter to give Pueblo home rule status, so it gave us a greater degree of autonomy and control over our own personal affairs. And there's like 100 or 200 cities like that in Colorado. And it's always a pain in the ass for the state government because they always want to impose their will. But these autonomous cities, I mean, we run ourselves, so that's amazing, right? Pueblo declared their independence in 1954. And that's why there's so much hatred by the elites right now because of that city charter. So let's take a little stroll back into 1954. Okay, first, let's talk about some other dates, and then we're going to get into this is all about 1954, but I got some other facts here. So, Pueblo, usually the first pioneer that people say that built a housing structure here was Zebulon Pike, and he did that in 1806, the breastwork fortification of Zebulon Pike. He was the first to raise the American flag over Colorado soil. So, he was a lieutenant at the time, and when he camped out at the site of Pueblo in 1806, he made this campsite so he could assault Pike's Peak. But not actually, I mean, it's the mountains close by. Pike Peak is actually 85 miles north, okay? So they call it Pikes Peak, named after Zebulon Pike, but it had been the mountains closer to us here. So that was 1806. He's, usually credited with founding one of the first structures here in Pueblo, one of the first pioneers. Now, 1954, people want to bitch about 1954 so goddamn much. 1954 wasn't as bad as 1854, okay? The 1854 Fort Pueblo massacre. In 1854, Pueblo wasn't doing good at all, okay? It was Native Mexicans who were living in Fort Pueblo. The original Americans weren't even living there, so Native Mexicans were living there, and then the Native Mexicans all got slaughtered by Native Indian Americans. So, yeah, that's, what's going on there? That was the Yikaria and the Muashis, the Utes and Apaches, the Dindies or Jindies or Tindies. So the Yikaria and the Muashi massacred all the Native Mexicans at the Fort Pueblo massacre. So, 1954, in 1954 we didn't have a massacre that wiped out all the inhabitants, okay? So that's 1954 at the very least. Let's acknowledge that 1954, we're doing better in 1954 than what we were doing in 1854. So, give us 100 years, we can at least not get massacred. Okay, so, that was 1854. Then in 1864, just to give you a sort of timeline of, of events, in 1864, towards the end of the Civil War, people in Colorado had voted the territory down. They did not want it to be a state. So the Colorado Territory voted statehood down in 1864, but then in 1865, Colorado said, yes, we want to become a state. And they voted it up in 1865, and they immediately adopted a constitution. So 1865, voters in Colorado Territory approved statehood. They immediately adopted a constitution, but guess what? Fucking President Andrew Johnson, that Confederate fucking loving fucker, that Reconstruction killing son of a bitch. He hated the radical Republicans when he was on a ticket with Abraham Lincoln. So in a way, did the Confederacy actually lose? Because Andrew Johnson became the fucking president. So he rejected and vetoed Colorado's statehood two times. Colorado said, we want to be a state. Andrew Johnson said, no, no, no. You can't be a state until Georgia's a state, okay? We're not going to adopt new states when these poor Confederate states aren't even our brothers yet. And also I think they want to have black men could vote. So they want to, allow black people to vote. He was against it. So Andrew Johnson, fuck Andrew Johnson. Eventually, 1876, August 1st, is when Ulysses S. Grant is going to assign Colorado into statehood, which is kind of wild because that's 1 year before Reconstruction failed. That's 1 year before U.S. Grant steps down. The Compromise of 1877, Tilden v. Hayes, which pulled all the federal troops out of the South, an unwritten compromise to allow the Republican Hayes. You could be the president, okay, Hayes, but you got to stop the federal occupation of the South. And the Colorado was created a state 1 year before that. It was also created a state 28 days after the centennial 100-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the July 4th birthday. So August 1st, 1876 would have been 100 years and 28 days after the centennial of the United States of America, which is why Colorado is called the Centennial State. So, fuck Andrew Johnson, fuck James Buchanan, fuck Henry Clay, because he's a hypocrite. And Andrew Johnson wouldn't let Colorado become a fucking state. Colorado could have become, could have been doing their statehood 11 years earlier. Instead, they didn't become a state until, 1876, when everything was just, everything was different then. Okay. So, 1954. Why the fuck would you hate 1954? That's when the city charter was written. That's when we got our autonomy. That's the Independence Day. June 1st, 1954, I think. No, that's when the airport began. But 1954 is when the airport began, okay? The day that we signed, April 6th, 1954, is Pueblo's Independence Day. So April 6th is our birthday. It's our Independence Day. We should celebrate April 6th just like we celebrate July 4th with lots of fireworks. Lots of fireworks on April 6th. Lots of fireworks here in Pueblo because that's our birth date. That's the day we became the city of Pueblo. We became not just Pueblo, but Pueblo. We're Pueblo fucking city now. And so now that we're Pueblo City, that's what 1954 did. So 1954, there's some bad things. That was during segregation, right? Eddie L. Hancock, he's a Puebloan. He played for the historic 1954 Pueblo Dodgers, which was a Negro baseball league. Here, Eddie L. Hancock. And he lived to be 84, died recently. So we had segregation back then. So everything wasn't perfect in 1954. Guatemala got coup d'etat. So that put Guatemala civil war. Guatemala descended into civil war for 35 years after that. So Eisenhower's sitting there, intervening in these countries in Latin America. We still had segregation, but 1954 was the year of Brown versus Board of Education. That was the big Supreme Court's unanimous decision of Brown versus Board of Education, which said separate but equal is bullshit. It's unconstitutional. So now we have to have schooling, integrated schooling, and we're going to get integration. So Brown versus Board of Education, that decision usually marks the beginning of the civil rights movement for integration in the United States. So that happened in May, right? So April 1st, is that what I said? April 6th, Pueblo becomes their own fucking nation, their own city-state, their own Sparta, their own Greece, their own Athens in April. And then May, Brown versus Board of Education says, you know what? Why do we have a Negro baseball league and why are we doing all this other shit? So now the integration, the segregation society would start to dissolve. The Boy Scouts of America desegregates on the basis of race. So already we're seeing in the Boy Scouts of America, the Brown versus Board of Education is affecting them. So 1954 was the starting point, right? 1954 was when they began to start to think about things differently. This is 9 years after World War II. After World War II, we basically conquered the world, right? Europe is devastated, but America was pretty much unfazed and in a position to control the whole world. So 50% of the entire world was ours. And for 9 years, we were the heroes, right, of the world. And in Pueblo, specifically here in Pueblo, there was 5 specific Pueblo-specific things that Pueblo did in 1954. They built 4 schools, 3 schools of which still exist today. They got the airport established and working as a military base, but then they turned it commercial, and then the first commercial flight was June 1st, 1954. So Pueblo's airport was established in 1954. 4 schools were built. The Benjamin Franklin Elementary School in the Belmont subdivision. 1954, it was built. Freed Middle School. 1954, it was built, named after a Pueblo family of educators. Fulton Heights Elementary School, 1954, in Fulton Heights subdivision. Let's see, the Freed Middle School is still there. It's downtown. Fulton Heights eventually integrated into Columbian Elementary. Irvin Place, it was also built in 1954. It replaced the original school constructed in 1906. Irvin Place still exists near the La Vista Jail in downtown. So we're building schools. We built 4 fucking schools this in 1 year in 1954. How many schools have we built in 2017? Do we quit building schools? Do we build schools and hospitals and clinics, and do we do that anymore? Gyms. I mean, what are we doing with all? We got $81 million budget in the city. The county is collecting taxes. I don't know, what do they got? $100 million. So you got county officials, city officials, all this money. Where's it all going? In 1954, they built 4 schools. They got the airport up and running. They built a golf course right next to the airport. So they took land next to the airport, built a golf course. 4 schools, airport. They were working on the Pueblo Freeway, I-25. It was being constructed from 1941 to 1959 to connect us to Denver, the capital of Colorado. So now Pueblo could get to the capital. So they're building the freeway, they're building I-25, they're building golf courses, they're building 4 schools, airports. And then one of the biggest things that happened here was the Parks and Recreation Department got real serious, and they got unified, and they started to build lots of parks. And that was a huge deal. So lots of the parks got built in 1954, and then there was also toleration of very high tax rates, which was actually across America. The highest tax rate, the income tax, was 91%. At one point in time, Eisenhower was taxing the Americans 91%. The average income tax for people was 63%. And then I got some more numbers coming, but that's 1954, okay? 1954. You want to shit on 1954, then you're shitting on Benjamin Franklin Elementary, Freed Middle School, and Irvin Place. You're shitting on the golf course by the airport, which I wouldn't be 100% against that. Why are we owning golf courses, right? That's a priority. That's a priority. We don't own trash around here. It's a free market society when it comes to trash, but we do own a golf course. So we do own is that a private business? Are we making money off this golf course? I don't know. The airport is up and running again now. It's the first jet service regularly scheduled since the late 1990s. So we haven't had regular jet service here in Pueblo, but now we got it this year, and so we can go to Denver. We're fucking international now. So we could get to Denver, and then we could go all across the world. So that's awesome that we got the airport, which was established by the people, the progressive Puebloans of 1954. They're building the freeways, they're building golf courses, 4 schools, airport, and then all the parks. I mean, I don't know which exactly specific parks, but go back to the airport. The airport, it was built in 1941 as the Pueblo Army Air Base. In July 1948, the city acquired the former Pueblo Army Air Base, a site used for B-24 training during World War II. So it started out as an air base, a B-24 training during World War II. So the airport very much is here because of the Greatest Generation. The Greatest Generation is the generation that got us the 1954 city charter. The progressive, the independent, the autonomous, the strong city charter. The new municipal airport did not open at this location 6 miles east of the city until June 1st, 1954. The first commercial flight, a Frontier Airlines plane from Denver, arrived at 7:28 a.m. Airport manager John Keeler, at the formal dedication of Pueblo Memorial Airport 2 months later on Colorado Day, declared the airport belongs to the people and announced there would be a dozen daily flights on either Frontier or Continental Airlines to selected locations in Texas, New Mexico, and Colorado. The airport was not an immediate success. In November 1954, it borrowed $13,000 from Pueblo City to cover the cost of remaining construction and the relocation of a water line near Highway 96. The net profit in 1964 was over $110,000. The majority of these funds came from landing fees and gasoline profits. So they eventually turned a profit here at the Pueblo Airport in 68. Took, 14 years or so. But Pueblo helped construct the airport. They helped with construction. They helped with relocating a water line. And they got it up and profitable, and now we're connected again, right? So we got daily jet service today, right? So the Pueblo Memorial Airport, constructed in 1954. You want to shit on 1954? Well, just go to the damn airport and just take a shit right on top of the airport. Just get right on top of the building. Just get right on, the towers. Get up there with the flight controllers, the air traffic controllers, right? Get on there with the wind and the sock. Right, and just take a big old dump right in their faces because you're shitting on 1954. That's what you're shitting on. The city abandoned separate park districts for a unified citywide district, citywide system under George L. Williams. George L. Williams, of course, as every true blue proud Puebloan knows, was the city's first director of Pueblo's Parks and Recreation Department. And he was a parks employee since 1932, but as soon as he got the gauntlet, he was like, you know what, let's bring this city together. And they actually talk really good about the parks. I'm not sure, there's a Bessemer Park and other parks, but golf course. During the 1950s, this newly established department made major improvements to the city park golf course, including the introduction of an 18-hole course in 1954 on former airport land adjacent to the existing course. So I wasn't lying when I told you about the golf course. That comes out of the Parks and Recreation. So Parks and Recreation is just building parks all over the place. And they're like, you know what? We need a fucking golf course too. So man, I mean, how much money did they have? How much they really loved the Pueblo people. They wanted Pueblo to be green. They wanted parks all over the place. Assistant Parks Director George R. Williams, is that the same guy? He was reflecting on the successes of Pueblo's modern parks and recreation system. Yes, no, George L. Williams and George R. Williams. Okay, what is going on here? George L. Williams was the first director of Pueblo's Parks and Recreation, but George R. Williams was an assistant parks director who in 1974 was reflecting on what was it about Pueblo's parks that made it so modern and awesome. And he was sitting there saying that the improvements after 1954, he said the post-1954 improvements led to a number of factors. He says the factors that led to it was a generous budget allocation over time, a progressive city council, and dedicated parks and recreation staff members. So dedicated employees, lots of money in the budget, and a progressive city council. 1954 was a progressive city council. The 1954 city charter was written by progressives. The charter itself is revolutionary and progressive. You're going to replace this system, it better be more revolutionary and more progressive, or, there's going to be fucking anarchy. You guys are going to fuck this entire city up because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You can't just say there's no freedom of speech. You can say it, but it's illegal. Move your piece back. You cannot collect $200 unless you collect go or pass go. So you want to collect $200 before you pass go? No, you can't do that. Here, take the $200. No, keep it, pay it back. Move your piece back. When you pass it, then you get your money. That's how it works. The Pueblo Freeway was being built 1941 to 1959. So that was in 54 too. So in 54 they'd been constructing the Pueblo Freeway, which I think is I-25. Other things in the 50s, Morton Elementary, Washington Elementary, Thomas Jefferson Elementary, South Park Elementary. Goodnight Elementary, Hyde Park, Sunset East High School, and South High School. These are all the schools that they were building in the 1950s. They were building schools left and right. There's a dozen schools right there. So 1950, so you're against public school, you're against universal education. Why would you be against universal education? Why? No, I want an answer. I'm gonna stand right here until you give me an answer. By 1954, nearly all the homes along Ruppel Street of the Belmont subdivision were occupied, although many of the Maudsley Avenue houses, also in the first filing, were still listed as vacant. So the Belmont subdivision was up and coming. It was booming. All the homes on Ruppel Street were taken, even though Maudsley Avenue houses weren't. The 1954 city directory, there were 6 individuals working at the Pueblo Ordnance Depot. One is a trainee, one is a mechanic, one is an analyst, one is a supply officer, one is an employee, one is a crane operator, another 3 at the CFI. One was a clerk, a draftsman, and a steel worker. CFI, Colorado Fuel and Iron, which was run by Jay Gould and John D. Rockefeller's heirs. Colorado Fuel and Iron, very famous for the infamous Ludlow Massacre of 1940 at the Ludlow Depot. Right now, Colorado Fuel and Iron, CFI, it's known as Evraz Group, which is a Russian steel corporation, and they bought it for $2.3 billion, I think. Something about $2.3 billion. So the Russians own the steel plant here. We used to be known as the Steel City because of this steel plant, CFI. And now the Russians, through the Evraz Group, they own it now. So, of the remaining owners, many worked in white-collar professions such as sales or managers. Alright, so, are you there yet in 1954? 1954, Dwight D. Eisenhower is the president right after World War II. I think it's like Leave It to Beaver. I think of that, the 50s. Segregation, but Brown versus Board of Education. Here it says 1955 in Pueblo. The mental health hospital had too many patients, 5,720 patients for a 4,900 bed facility. So I think there's some similarities there. But that just shows you how, people were crazy about Pueblo. They were so crazy they just, couldn't wait to get here. And then they locked them up in the crazy fucking ward. The cost of things in 1954, a house was $22,000. The average income was $4,000. To buy a brand new Ford car, it was between $1,500 to $2,400. Milk was 92 cents a gallon. Gas was 21 cents a gallon. Bread was 17 cents a loaf. Postage stamp was 3 cents. Swiss cheese was 69 cents a pound. American cheese 55 cents a pound. And T-bone steak 95 cents a pound. So, are you there yet? Gas is 21 cents. You get a loaf of bread for 17. Postage cents, just 3 pennies. It's now 50 cents. Bread is $1 to $2. Gas is between $2 to $3. Milk, it's increased about, 200-300%. But gas, it's increased about 100%. Or 1,000%, my bad. Okay, so the taxes, like I was telling you before, 91% was the top federal tax rate on regular income. At one point, the average top income tax rate was 63%. The average top capital gains tax rate was 25%. So capital gains was at 25%. It was at its average. The top rate on corporate tax on this year, 1954, was 52%. So I think it's like 38%. So corporate tax was higher back then. Annual income tax, I don't think we're getting taxed 63 or 91% right now. So that's high taxes. That's some heavy high taxes, okay? So everything's dirt fucking cheap. Cheap gas, cheap milk, cheap bread, cheap cars, cheap houses, and then everything's being taxed out the wazoo. So basically it just seems like it's a big fucking party. They just got so much goddamn money. Money for airports, money for golf courses, money for parks, money for brand new schools, money for a brand new charter. Okay, so what else was going on? Ketchup was 25 cents for two 14-ounce bottles. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe finally married the love of her life, Joe DiMaggio. Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe married in 1954. So that happened, right? You're shitting on their fucking relationship. That's a match made in heaven there. 1954, this is the year after the Great Flood of 1953. Europe is devastated. America ruled over the world after World War II. The first mass vaccination of all the children in the world against the polio disease begins in Pittsburgh, February 23rd, 1954. So there's something huge, right? Polio. Thank you, 1954 generation, for getting rid of polio, right? Fuck. Piss on 1954. If, you know, fucking assholes want to shit on 1954, then you're shitting on the eradication of polio. What do you want everybody to get polio? Huh? The RCA manufactures the first color television set, a 12-inch screen, priced $1,000. First TV set, $1,000. Okay, that price has come down. The first operational subway line in Canada opens in Toronto. Bill Haley and his Comets record Rock Around the Clock, right? Rock around the clock tonight. And the rock and roll craze, April 1954. So 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock rock. I'm gonna rock around the clock tonight when the clock talks you down, da 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 da. We're gonna rebel against the older generation. Gonna shake our hips, scare them to death. Elvis, right? Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, Joe DiMaggio. So when all these people were Bill Haley and his Comets. Yo, it's Bill Haley and it's my Comets. I brought my Comets here. The intellectuals of the obscure city of Pueblo, Colorado got their shit together and they declared their independence. A revolutionary home rule city charter was submitted to the people of Pueblo at a special election held April 6, 1954, and Pueblo approved it by a vote of 8,632 to 7,093, 55% to 45%. Overwhelming margins. They approved it by over 1,500 votes. So Pueblo fucking knew what the hell was up. 8,600 of them at least did a charter convention, had been agreed to by the Puebloans 5 months prior. So on November 3rd, 1953, the question on the ballot was like, do you want a charter convention? They said yes. The charter convention delegates wrote and unanimously adopted the Pueblo City Charter. And then they submitted the revolutionary charter to the people of Pueblo at the special election held April 6, 1954. And then that's when they approved it. 8,632 to 7,093. So April 6, 1954, Pueblo threw off her Denver and D.C. chains. We're not subordinate to the state of this state or of the nation. We are fabulous and fierce and independent, and we're a free city-state. 1954. 1954, 20-gallon gas water heater was $75. Semi-automatic Kenmore washer was $154. Clorox bleach, a half-gallon, was 19 cents. Post grape nut cereal was 19 cents for a 10-ounce package. Pueblo, don't forget about all those Pueblo towns in northern New Mexico. That's important shit to know about. The 19 Puebloan towns, the Pueblo towns, the Pueblos, El Pueblos, the people. Acoma, Cochiti, Isleti, Jemez, Laguna, Nambe, Oque, Owinge, Picuris, Pojak, Sandia, San Felipe, Zia, Zuni, Taos, Tesuque, Santo Domingo, Santa Clara, Santa Ana, San Ildefonso. Each one of those tribes is a sovereign nation with its own government, lifeways, and traditions and culture. So we're named Pueblo. We were named El Pueblo, Fort Pueblo. But there's a shit ton of Pueblo towns, actual Pueblos, the village of adobe structures, Native Americans. And so I don't think it's a stretch to think that some of that Puebloan culture might have came up here. So 1953. 1953, in November 3rd, the city of Pueblo voted for a charter convention. which is what Pueblo should do now. You want a strong mayor, vote for a charter convention just like they did in 1953. Get the charter convention written, get the charter submitted, and then if it's a strong mayor, then vote for the mayor after you get your charter. But right now, our charter says we're a city manager government. We're a city manager government. And if you want a different kind of government, then you have to get a charter convention. That's the rules. Them's the fucking rules. So to have an amendment, to slip this amendment out there, and to trick the people so you could write your own government in secret. This is the elites. They're trying to coup d'etat. They're trying to take over this fucking city. I don't know why. I don't know what their intent is, but I don't trust them. And I do trust the people of 1954 who wrote this charter. So it was a revolutionary, progressive charter then, which is why the people of Pueblo voted for it on April 6, 1954. Right? Every true blue Puebloan knows that John Oliver Hall was the first city manager hired by the city council after the revolutionary home rule city charter made the city of Pueblo into an autonomous city-state. Everybody knows that. John Oliver Hall. Yes. J-O Hall. Joe Hall. John Oliver Hall. So, 1954. Quit shitting on it. It's not that bad of a year. Pueblo, elites,